It's allergy season. Let's strap on those masks. Alright, bit of a disclaimer. This is not a mask to be used to protect yourself against COVID-19. This mask is best used against allergies connected with pollen, like what we're experiencing here in North Carolina, because this mess is getting real. But this is a project that you can do as you're quarantined and need something to do. It's a quick project and you can make many in one day. If you have an N95 mask, so it won't look so scary, you can put one of these on top of it. But do not wear this mask without anything else underneath it. Otherwise, it's not a proper mask to wear against COVID-19. Okay, here are the supplies that you're going to need. First and foremost, you're going to need some yarn. Doesn't matter, worsted weight would suffice. A pair of scissors, a 4mm crochet hook, a yarn needle, a thread needle. You're going to need some thread. You're going to need 4 stitch markers and some cotton fabric. Why cotton? Well, cotton being a natural product, it has many advantages. It has the ability to control moisture, it insulates, it's comfortable against your face, it's hypoallergenic, it's weatherproof, and it's a durable fabric that stands up against the test of time, and it just stays the same. But being the fact that it insulates and it's weatherproof and doesn't irritate your skin, it's the best product to actually use for this particular project. The link to the written pattern is in the description box below. Make sure you have that handy, and then we're going to move on to row number 1. Alright, so grabbing your yarn and your 4mm crochet hook, we're going to chain 2. Now in the first chain, we're going to do 11 double crochets. And that first chain 2 that we did counts as 1 also. So then altogether it'll be 12 double crochets. Now arriving at row number 2, we're going to take and insert our hook into that first chain that we did. And then we're going to do a slip stitch. Pull up a loop and then slip it underneath the first loop. And we're going to close that off. We're going to pull that little tail and we're going to pull it tight to close the hole. Now to start row number 2, we're going to chain 2. And then we're going to double crochet in a stitch that's below that chain, therefore making 2 double crochets at the beginning. And then we're going to repeat the pattern of 2 double crochets in each stitch all the way around. Arriving at the end of row number 2, we are going to again insert our hook into the first chain that we did for that row, and then we're going to slip stitch to close it off. Now for the start of row number 3, we're going to chain 2, then we're going to double crochet in the stitch below the chain. Then we're going to repeat the pattern of 2 double crochets and 1 double crochet in the next stitch. And we're going to repeat that all the way around. For row number 4, what we're going to do is we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to double crochet in the stitch below the chain. And then we're going to repeat the pattern of 1 double crochet in the next 2 stitches, and then 2 double crochets in the next stitch. So we're going to repeat that pattern all the way around. For the beginning of row number 5, we're going to chain 2. Then for this row, we're going to evenly double crochet around. So we're not going to go in the stitch below the chain. We're going to go into the next stitch. So double crochet evenly with no increases. For row number 6, what we're going to do is we're going to chain 2, we're going to double crochet in the stitch below the chain, and then we're going to double crochet in the next 3 stitches. So we're going to repeat the pattern of 2 double crochets in the next stitch, and then 1 double crochet in the next 3 stitches. Just a little side note, you don't have to use just one color. You can use a variegated yarn that has multiple colors worked into it, or you could just change colors every row as you go along. Moral of the story, have fun with it. To start working on the sides, we're going to cut the yarn here. And to finish it off properly, we're going to just pull the end all the way through the loop. And we're just going to pull it tight. Now for this part, you're going to grab all your stitch markers. It should be 4. Now from this point, we are going to count back 4 stitches from the last stitch that we did. That's 2 stitches, 3rd, 4, 5. So we're going to put the stitch marker in the 5th stitch. So count back 1, 2, 3, 4, and then put the stitch marker in the 5th stitch from the last stitch that you did. For these next 2 stitches or stitch markers, what we're going to do is we're going to count over from that stitch marker. We're going to count that stitch marker and count over 17 stitches. Then we're going to put our stitch marker in the 18th stitch. Now for our last stitch marker, we're going to go to the other side of the last stitch that we worked, and then we're going to count over from that stitch marker. We're going to count over 17 stitches, and then we're going to place our stitch marker in the 18th stitch. So you'll see from the written pattern that I numbered each one of these stitch markers so that we know which side we're working on. This one is the 1st stitch, this is the 2nd, this is the 3rd, and this is the 4th. Knowing that is going to keep you situated as to which side you're going to be working on. For side 1, you're going to be working between stitch marker number 1 and stitch marker number 2. So you're going to attach your yarn in stitch marker number 1, and you're going to attach it with a slip stitch. And then you're going to chain 3. Now this part is optional, but I'm going to take my little end piece of our working yarn, and I'm going to be crocheting around it. So I just pull it forward so that I can be working around it as I crochet. And we're going to yarn over, and then we are going to double crochet evenly across these 18 stitches between stitch marker number 1 and stitch marker number 2. And then our last stitch of that row will be in that last stitch that was marked with the stitch marker. Once that row is finished, we're going to chain 3, and then we're going to turn. And then we're going to double crochet evenly. And as you can see, we don't go into this stitch, we go into the very next stitch, and that's how we keep it even. Now we need to repeat this for 3 more rows. So I did 5 rows of double crochet on either side for this mask, but in your case, if you want it to be a little bit smaller for a child, then you would go less rows at this point. But in my case, being an average adult, I just ended up doing 5 rows, but you can do as many rows as you'd like. If you need it for a male, go more rows. You need it for a child, go less rows. It's that easy. For the other side of this mask, we're going to be working between stitch markers 3 and 4. And all you have to do is just repeat the same thing that you did for this first side. So when you arrive at the end of your side one, you're not going to cut the yarn. You're just going to continue crocheting across the edge of your mask, and this should be the bottom edge of it by this point. And so you're just going to chain one, and then you're going to single crochet across the bottom. Single crochet until you arrive at the second corner. Now, when you get to the second corner, what you're going to do is you're going to chain 70. Now, at this point, you can leave it the way it is and tie it off and have extra string. Or you can do this other method where I'm going to slip stitch all the way down this chain. Even though I started with a very, very long chain, when you slip stitch down a chain, it makes it a little bit shorter, and it also makes it a little bit tighter where it's much of a better tie than just having a chain, just flimsy little chain just flopping in the wind. So when I do a slip stitch, it makes it into like a little cord. So that's why I'm going to do this technique, because if you do this technique this way, then you will arrive back at the mask, and then you can continue with your single crochet around the edge of the mask. So this is the finished cord, and as you can see, it's tough. Now you're going to continue single crocheting across the edge and side of the mask. Again, you're going to chain 70 and then slip stitch down the chain. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be slip stitching down the sides, and then once you get to a corner, you're going to do a tie until you have 4 ties, and then all the edges are single crocheted. And once you get to the end, all you have to do is insert your hook, and then you're going to slip stitch into the first single crochet you've done. Now cut your end and pull it all the way through. Now weave in all your ends. Now this is your finished project, kind of. You're going to grab your fabric now. Now after you've laid your fabric flat, you're going to take a water-soluble pen and you're going to mark out a piece of fabric. And when you mark out this fabric, you need to make sure you make the fabric piece bigger than the mask itself, because you're going to end up folding the edges. So you need enough fabric to work with. Now you can start to cut out your piece of fabric. Now grab an iron and you're going to fold those pieces, and then flatten them with the iron is so much better than trying to keep it folded or pinning it. So what I do is I like to fold it as much as I can and then iron it down. not sure how familiar you are with the back side of a work and the front side of the work. So if you're familiar with that, that's one thing, but it's kind of hard for me to explain it, but I can tell by looking at it where the front side is and where the back side is. So the back side is where you want to put your fabric. The front is what you want to see showing. So you're going to lay the front flat on your table, and then you're going to attach your fabric to the back side of your mask. And so you don't have to be a magical seamstress in order to get this right, but what I like to do is I like to stitch it by hand. It's so much easier, and I like to keep the stitches straight, just so it just stays neat. And if you keep the stitches straight, you know that everything is going to stay straight and the fabric will stay folded. When you get to this last part, there's a possibility of leaving it open as a little pocket. I've seen people leave it open and put an extra filter in there. I mean, that's your choice if you want to do that, but I decided to just close it all off. Now this is the finished project. And this is what I meant when I said to keep the stitches straight, because that way you know that the fabric will stay folded under and it's not going to come unraveled later on. And now this is how you're going to put it on. You're first going to attach it to the top of your head. It's the same thing as the N95 mask. You always have to put the strap on the top of your head and then the bottom strap around your neck. Again, do not use this mask to replace an N95 mask because that's just not going to work. And if you get sick, don't be coming back to me and send me messages and saying, I got sick anyway. I don't want to hear it. I told you it's a disclaimer. So this is for pollen only, and this is not for an N95. So I hope you enjoy this project that's really quick. And I hope it helps you when it comes to the pollen that's going crazy outside right now, because it definitely has helped me a bunch. But again, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay inside, keep doing those projects.